The majority of Canadian students seem to have come to a consensus. There are consequences to expressing a non-mainstream view in Canadian university classes. Hello, my name is Leah Mushet. I'm a reporter here at the Western Standard, and I sat down with Matthew Mitchell, Senior Fellow to the Center of Human Freedom, who conducted a survey with his colleague, Michael Zwaagstra, Senior Fellow at the Fraser Institute as well, with over 1,200 university Canadian students, asking them questions related to whether they're allowed to have open and free discussions in their classrooms. Overall, they came to the conclusion 1 in 3 students feared formal consequences like professors lowering their grades for expressing their honest views. To uncover more, Matthew elaborates.
So we were interested in gaining a better understanding of how constrained Canadian university students feel in terms of their ability to express themselves on campus, whether they encountered diverse viewpoints and whether diverse viewpoints were, permitted on Canadian university campuses. And so to that end, we commissioned this poll from Leger that's 1,200 Canadian university students who are either current students or recently graduated, and we asked them a number of questions that sort of dug at the idea of encountering viewpoint diversity and what sort of constraints people encountered in terms of what they were allowed to, the opinions that they felt comfortable expressing in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So for one of the first questions I have on the actual study itself,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of would be interested in knowing like what were your conclusions from like the results of the study?
So I'd say number one, a large number of students, both center, left, and right, feel somewhat constrained in classrooms. So, a majority of them said that they felt that there was a safe viewpoint on the university campus, for example. So, and a large number felt that they had to self-censor in terms of their views. And that's just sort of overall. Then the second thing I think that comes out is when you then dig into, you start dividing the answers based on whether people are self-described as left of center, center, or right of center, then they seem to find they have pretty different perspectives and pretty different experiences. So right of center students felt more constrained than left of center students. They felt like they were more likely to encounter left of center professors, for example, and they felt more likely to encounter like actual consequences for expressing their opinions. So they were a pretty significant majority felt that they were likely to have their grades, were worried about their grades being lowered if they expressed their views.
Mm. Yeah, like I remember reading about that one. And I was also wondering because yeah, you said there was different depending on like where they leaned on the political spectrum of like what they were concerned about.
Yep.
Um, I don't recall if I read this in the actual study itself, but was there like any concerns that the majority shared, no matter like their political leanings, like a concern that they shared?
Yeah. So let's see here if we dig in. Um, a, a majority of students, both center, middle, and left, felt that there was a correct viewpoint on campus, a right view. So that's one where there's a fair amount of agreement. If students felt that their professors were pushing a particular viewpoint, they actually, so 83% of right of center students said that the viewpoint that was pushed was a left view,
Mhm.
whereas only 45% of left students said that. But another way so you could look at that and say, okay, it's a big difference, 83 to 45. On the other hand, the other way to look at it is almost half of left of center students agree with their right of center colleagues that professors have a left of center bias.
Mhm. Mhm.
So even a relatively sizable portion of left of center students are kind of conceding that their professors, yeah, they're left of center.
Right. Like on that note as well, since it's like they recognize that most of their professors are having these specific views, would that like so then I'm thinking it would be more mostly they're concerned about like the grade aspect because they obviously are in school, so they want to be successful there. And yeah, so that's the outcome of that.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a difference here between left of center and right of center in terms of what are the types of consequences that they are most likely are most worried about. So first of all, it's helpful, I think, maybe to break this down in terms of formal consequences versus informal consequences. So if you ask the students, okay, what are the formal consequences you're most worried about from expressing a view? 74% of right-leaning students said that they were afraid of that the professor would lower their grade. 53% of left of center students had the same concern.
Mhm.
Uh, and in terms of the formal consequences, that's like the big one that they're worried about. About a third of both left and right, though, were worried about that the professor might not write them a letter of recommendation, or that other students would file a complaint. Now, if you go to the informal, that's where there's a little bit more of a disagreement there. So among right of center students, the most common informal concern or informal consequence of expressing their opinions that they were afraid of was that other students would criticize them. Whereas among left of center students, their most common concern was that the professor wouldn't like them.
Hmm. That's
So it kind of
yeah,
breaks it down a little bit. Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, no. Because then I guess they both kind of do sound like they want to socially conform just in different ways out of
Mhm.
fear, I guess.
Yeah, I think the right-leaning students are trying to socially conform to their peers, and left-leaning students are trying to socially conform to the professors, is it
Mm.
maybe a good way to put it.
That's true. I like you wouldn't haven't like what do you think is the reason for that? Do you have any like thoughts on that?
Maybe it has something to do with if you share the opinion of your professor, then you're more worried about their view of you versus if you feel like they don't share my opinion or my views, so that doesn't matter to me, but I don't want to be ridiculed by my peers. I'm speculating a little bit here, but that kind of would be consistent with what we're seeing.
That sounds reasonable. Yeah, I would understand why. Okay. As to my next question, when you were asking like the students, like the different types of sorry, I quoted you here, so let me just read it.
Mhm.
Or exactly the question that was being asked. Who experienced a classroom environment at university that limited discussion and questions on controversial topics to only one side of the argument? Oh
Yep.
yeah, to that one. So I know you just did the survey and stuff, so they didn't give you like any examples as to like what would be the majority opinions of certain topics at all?
No, we didn't get down to what's your view of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or anything like that, if that's kind of what you mean.
Mm.
It's just really sort of more generic, are multiple perspectives welcome or not?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Also, this question just occurred to me, but I feel like maybe it is the case. Do you think the internet also plays a part in this? Because maybe the reason why it feels like this is because if they're socially ridiculed or they're ridiculed by the professor or whatever, it can also just like go public easily and like it can reach a bunch of different people than it would never reach in the past, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I wish I don't know if we have enough information from this survey to indicate that. We didn't ask specifically, are you worried about being videotaped and going viral or anything like that? In retrospect, that would have been a great question to ask. But I mean, I do think that people are just in general from other research. We know that students are increasingly aware, of course, that their digital footprint it lasts forever, right? And you have to be aware of that in terms of your reputation. But I don't know. I think that's going a little bit beyond the bounds of this survey. Great
Okay.
question.
Mm. Then, yeah, because I was gonna also ask you like what you think. Obviously, yeah, it's kind of more like a speculation thing, but if you were to take this like survey 10 years ago, do you
Yeah.
think you would get similar results?
So probably, I don't think it as much. One thing is, we know that over time, there is less viewpoint diversity on campuses. Professors were less likely to self-identify as left of center versus right of center, in the past.
Mm.
Um, and I think we also are seeing some indication that professors are more comfortable viewing their role as pushing as advocating a position,
Mhm.
rather than necessarily, it's, we're exploring this question as scientists or as thinkers rather than, we're trying to change the world. So I think there is evidence of that, definitely.
Mhm. That makes sense. Okay. Um, let's see. I guess I kind of did ask you about your own conclusions already, but what do you want, like, readers that are going to look at this survey, what do you want them to conclude from this? Or, like, what do you think they can do to counteract this sort of thing that's happening on campuses and, like, students aren't able to, like, say what they think?
Yeah, great question. So, I think there's a couple of things that we can think about. One, I want the schools to take this seriously, and I want professors to take this seriously. Those of us who are, spend time in a classroom, we know that we have an obligation to make that classroom as much of a marketplace of ideas as we can, where people are free to raise questions, challenge existing models, express their values, and then let the ideas contend with one another. And it's incumbent on professors to recognize they may have a perspective, and that's okay. All of us have perspectives, but you still want to make sure that the students feel comfortable expressing their views. In terms of the other thing I want universities to better understand is that they need to take the lack of viewpoint diversity on campuses seriously. And again, you can and should. All of us have biases, and you should hire professors of. It's okay to hire a left of center professor, but you should also try to make sure that you hire people with other viewpoints, because if students are only getting that one perspective, that's a problem. And then finally, I think I would say it's really good to think through what are some institutional mechanisms that universities can implement that try to encourage, more of this challenge process, more of this viewpoint diversity. So whether it's free speech, codes that are protecting the freedom of both professors and students to express their views. University of Chicago has some interesting models around that, and a lot of universities have adopted some of these. Um, whether it's there's interesting models of like student bill of rights that essentially say, you have a right to express your view, and if you feel that you have been silenced, you also have a means of redressing that, and you can bring it up to the administration. So those kinds of, it's not just changing mindsets, but I think it's also changing institutions and incentives so that professors and universities are incentivized to make it a marketplace of ideas.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you. So,
Awesome. Well, great questions. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
yeah, it was interesting. So, I appreciate you coming. Yeah. And if you ever have any other studies that I find interesting, I'll definitely reach out to you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, feel free to reach out anytime.